We are live from Netanya, Yehuda Shamroth, and Leor Robin, and Rabbi Pinchas Winston. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for Redemption Thursdays. And Rabbi Winston will be speaking tonight about questions and answers we all have about the geula shalema, what's going on in the world right now through the eyes of the Torah and current events. And without further ado, thank you so. Oh, I'm going to put that there. Okay, Rabbi, thank you for
Okay,
joining.
thanks. Okay, it was kind of like last minute, so I guess people didn't really have a chance to send any questions in, or they have no questions at all, which is even better. But just to start things off, kick things off a little bit, I'll just and forgive me if I repeat myself, someone from last week, but some of these ideas have been in my parsha sheets as well, and some people have responded to that and asked questions about the situation, why why it is that so much suffering has to be involved. That's really the bottom line. I mean, we don't mind the fact that there's tikkun in the world. We don't mind the fact that things have to happen to bring the redemption. That's a process that takes time. It's all 5,784 years since creation first began, and we're told that Mashiach can come early, and people have gone through generations believing that and tried to bring him, and maybe there were moments that came close. There's always these stories about how almost, if we'd only done this, and if only you'd done, it's like, and he was almost here, but he wasn't. Here we are, 5784. Once again, the government divided. Once again, the left heaping their complaints and insults and whatever on top of the right, and dissension, and we have war going on at the same time that we can't seem to resolve, and we have the Hatufim, we have the hostages we're trying to get back. It's been such a long time, and it's hard to even imagine what their minds are like, what they've been going through. It's one thing, a short period of time, but such a long period of time, it's just absolutely very hard to understand and very hard to relate to, and no one should ever know such things. But on the other hand, we have to worry about what their situation is, and as one person described it, like water going down the drain, you see watching the sink and the water is going down the drain, and that's the way the world looks to them. And why does it always come down to that? I was just informed today, seemed to be a reputable article. I did not verify it myself personally, but I have no reason to assume otherwise, that the Canadian government has decided to pass a law that within 2 months that will prohibit shechita from taking place. That they find it again, like other nations. I think Switzerland in the past said things like this: it's an inhumane, that they find shechita an inhumane way to kill animals, even though really, technically speaking, it's not. And they want to ban it. I assume that other forms like electric shock to the brain or whatever they do to kill animals instantaneously is still permitted. They're still allowing the clubbing of the heads of baby seals, apparently, the article said. But and that's a major, like, once again, here we are. But who would have thought? Now, of course, from their perspective, that they're doing what they think is the moral thing to do, the humane thing to do. That's the world. The world always puts its priorities in some place that is not necessarily where the Torah puts its priorities. And that's why we've had world wars, and that's why things fall apart, and that's why people misread people and things all the time. That's the world. Without Torah, without God's direction, it's kind of lost and loses its way. But in any case, it's a sign. These are signs. What's happening in the States in general are signs. We're watching the deterioration of society. Again, if you ask people in the mix of it, and what's going on, as far as they're concerned, they're making advances. They're progressing. They're changing the world to make it a better place for them the way they want it to be. They have no idea that they're causing the undermining of certain values, or they don't care. This next election coming up, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like, because given that where things have gone up until now, how can it be a peaceful election? How can things happen in a straightforward way? How can the reaction simply be what it used to be in the past? Oh, we lost the election, let's move on and work towards the next one. It's a completely different world. It's a world like other worlds in the past, where the situation was repeated, and whatever happened after that happened after that. And again, once it's like, how? One of the reasons why German Jews didn't leave Germany when they could have between 1933 and 1939 was because they really saw society advance. They were part of the advancement of society since the 1800s. The caste system had fallen apart, and people are no longer, locked into positions in life they can't get out of. And the Industrial Revolution, literally revolutionized everything. And then people moved to the cities, and there was job opportunities that never existed before, and people were making money, and there was, food. Technology was making things more comfortable. It looked like society was, in fact, getting much better. And therefore, why assume it's going to go back to the Dark Ages once again and result in terrible, violent, unspeakable anti-Semitism? Okay, there's always going to, as someone once told I forget who it was, one of the Jewish leaders of America in the secular world, told, I think it was, what's his name, Avram Fox, his name, the head of the Anti-Defamation League back in the 1990s. He himself was saying that someone told him this. And at some function of secular Jewish leaders, he was asked, why does the ADL still exist? Why does the Anti-Defamation League still exist? We don't need it anymore. Anti-Semitism is a thing of the past. He says, there'll always be somebody who will, who will be an anti-Semite or just hate. I mean, hate is always in society. And they'll do graffiti in the bathroom by drawing some kind of swastika or something, or defame something or destroy a cemetery. But overall, mankind after the Holocaust has moved forward. And the reason why he was mentioning this because anti-Semitism at that time had already grown 300%. They didn't know why. They didn't understand why that was the case. They didn't know what to do about it. But that was what was noted, because that's they keep track of these things. So he was saying, like, here, this man, this person, this leader thought that anti-Semitism is no longer a serious problem because society had moved on, and it didn't. It doesn't. Man's the same man as he always was. The clothing changed, the technology changes, but as we made the point several times before, there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. You can become a lot smarter and still not be too wise. You can be a lot smarter and become less wise, and sometimes because of the knowledge. In the end, technology is incredible. I mean, I'm always in awe of what technology allows us to do and how it allows us to extend ourselves and to accomplish things that we could not do without the technology. But on the other hand, I see, as do the educators, that technology has weakened people's educational skills because they rely so much on technology to do what once upon a time the human brain did. I don't have too many phone numbers memorized. Once upon a time, I made a point of it because that's the only way to know what it was. If I was away from my phone book, to call somebody. And I've asked other people the same question: how many phone numbers do you know off by heart? And they barely knew their own because they could just use their phone, just punch it in and bring it up, or go online. And it's weakening people, and it's desensitizing people. So even though on one hand it looks like we're advancing, it looks like things are actually going backwards once again, and they are. We're going right back to a lot of that hatred. Now, it's true there are differences. One difference is that back in the 1940s there was no Israel to blame. The Jewish people did not have the land yet. There were Jews living there, and there were some pogroms, but it was not in Jewish control. The Balfour Agreement, well, it's not the way it is today. And even though the Balfour Agreement in 1917 suggested that the Jewish people get a parcel of land and the Arabs have a parcel of land, but it was not associated yet with the Jewish people. And so anti-Semitism was about the Jews living in Europe and around the world. And today, so people pick on Israel, but again, if you look at the facts on the ground of what's going on over here and how it happens, I mean, it's just so simple. It's so obvious that the only reason why you could be against Israel, especially in this particular situation, is because you've got a problem with Jews or self-hatred, Jewish self-hatred. Because I live here, and the people around me live here, and I know them, and I know other communities because I visited them. I have friends living in other communities too. And if you take a poll across the country, Israelis want peace. They would love to make peace with the Arabs. Absolutely love it. So people would say, well, give them the land. No, doesn't work there. They have tons of land. People forget the Jordanians, the Palestinians once upon a time lived in Jordan, right? Remember Black September? That was them. Back in that, they didn't want them. They kicked them out. There's no Arab. There's a reason why there's no Arab nation today who would take a piece of land and give it to the Palestinians and help them set up a government and give them, a whole country to themselves. They have more than enough land, money, everything, all the resources. They don't want them. There's a reason why they don't want them and why they push them on the Jewish people instead. Aside from the fact that we have a biblical right to the land, aside from the fact the land was taken away from us, just one thing, but people don't think so clearly today. They don't do the research they should do today. And as a result of that, they come to false conclusions. But at the bottom of it, whether they realize or not, there's some type of hatred there. There's some type of it's the Jews again, it's the Israelis again. And it's one of the same thing. They want to say it's not the same thing, but it really is the same thing, because you find that any other country that's done the same thing, and they do, and look at Russia and the Ukraine. I mean, Israel did not start this war. We did not, give any reason for this to happen. We gave so much already. People have no understanding. I used to go to the old city to learn, and every once a month there'd be a big lineup of Arabs at the bank, because the Israeli government was giving them handouts of money that they weren't giving to the Jews. So one of the reasons why they couldn't give the Jews, they couldn't afford to, because it was giving to the Arabs. Billions of shekels have gone to help Arabs. And then they go to jail because of terrorism, and we educate them. We treat them better than they would probably live at home half the time. So reason after reason after reason, if you do the research and you figure it out, you just ask the question, as some people have done. Some Gentiles have written about this, who were virulent anti-Semites because that's the way they were raised, only to go check it out and find it differently, and then they go to try and change the way others think. Doesn't work because they're not there. They can't see for themselves, and they don't want to, because they're when you build a life philosophy upon a certain hatred, it's very hard to abandon that hatred. But all of that, all of this, right? Because really, if you think about it, society should advance. It should become more civil. We shouldn't have to be worrying about the things that we're worrying about today. So the question that was being asked is, why do we have to? Okay, so we explain this concept of the gevuras. It's a tricky concept. If you learn Kabbalah, it takes a little while to get it down, but once you understand what these things are, so then it makes more sense. But if you're hearing it for the first time, it's like, what? What does that even mean? What is it even talking about? So imagine, for example, that you have a budget, right? It's amazing. In some businesses, they want you to spend the budget. They're not saying, well, here's the money we allotted to you. Be careful with it, and if there's anything left, great, we'll put it back into the pot. Other times it's not that way at all. For whatever reason, for write-offs, they got to spend it all. If you fall short, you still have to spend it some other way. So imagine someone, gives you a budget and says that when this last dollar or last shekel or last ruble, whatever, is used up, then you're finished. Okay, but until that time, you're still involved. Even if you take a break and you rest and you can't think of anything else to spend it on, nevertheless, the clock is still ticking and the money still needs to be spent. At that point, you have a budget. And that budget is defining what you can do and should do. Okay, and the same thing is true in life. We just think we were put here to do what? As one scientist seemed to imply, but we said that it's not like that. He almost implying that the world was just one big, huge human zoo, and it's like you go to the zoo, the animals just walking around doing their whatever they can do inside the environments that the limited environments that they live within, right? But it's like so somebody came and seeded the earth and created man, and just watching the whole thing transpire from their planet 6 billion light years away because they're so technologically advanced, and that was his explanation for the world. But it's not. That's not the idea. Clearly, there's some evidence for sure to say just the opposite. Without, if you don't believe in Torah, just the evidence. The Torah itself says clearly not like that. That God made man specifically, and it's very simple. It's very simple. He said, I created you. I'm going to, all of this for you, the whole thing, and it goes way beyond the physical world they're used to seeing. I created all of that to give you free will for a certain period of time in order to make free will choices that will use up something called the Tzatzik Kedusha, which are holy sparks, or Gevuras, which I'll explain in a second what that is. And when all that's done, then the period of free will come to an end, and we'll start the Messianic period, where you're going to start enjoying the pleasure that I had in mind when I first created you. But to get to that pleasure, you have to first go through all of this. Just like a person, for example, dreams of retiring, someplace, some beautiful home on the ocean. Right? It's going to cost a lot of money. He's not going to be able to do it right out of high school, not usually. So therefore, he understands. He has to go to college, get a degree, get a job, work hard for many, many years, decades, hopefully build up enough money, make an investment, make maybe several investments. Eventually, maybe at the end of all of it, he's going to be able to buy his dream house and retire. But there's all this work in between. So likewise, history is the exact same way. Meaning, that we have to go through a period of time where we struggle and we work hard and we accomplish great things and then save up as a result of that. And then when it's all said and done, the Messianic era will begin, and we'll start to enjoy the world the way it's meant to be without an evil inclination, and therefore without any evil whatsoever, without the Sitra Achra, the Sat, and whatever. The world will be a very ideal place. Very natural in the beginning, but every day it'll become less natural and more miraculous. Eventually that will give way to another period called Techiyas HaMesim, which is resurrection of the dead. And the resurrection of the dead is to recreate mankind according to the way it once was before the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because you can't go to the world to come like this. We're too physical. The world to come is spiritual. Where this is a very physical, you can't even jump off the ground. You're so heavy, you're so physical. We have to go back to being more spiritual than physical. So even the body apparently is capable of being like a soul. It will be more physical than the soul will be, but it'll be so spiritual then that compared to our bodies right now, it'll be like a soul. And that's guesses of the world to come. And then there's 1,000 years of rectification, but it's all pleasure. It's all incredible pleasure. And then another 1,000 years of a higher level of pleasure, and then another 1,000 years. And each 1,000 years is refining us some more and refining us some more and refine until we get back to this essential divine light from which we came in the first place, in order to become attached to God and have pleasure beyond our wildest imagination. Today, when you mention pleasure and religion, they don't necessarily go hand in hand in most people's minds, even religious people. It's like God, pleasure. It's like, how does that work? Taking a vacation, that's pleasure, right? Eating fancy food, that's pleasurable, right? Having a nice conversation with somebody you like, that's pleasure. But God, religion, that's like, that's religious. That's strenuous, and you have to sacrifice. And even the people who seem to like it, they understand that it's still, you can't be so involved in the physical world. But that's only because people look at the world through the eyes of their body, which loves comfort, which is part of this world and doesn't know better. It's like sitting down with your 4-year-old child, right, and listen to them talk about life, what they want from life. You ask a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, if they're old enough, maybe a 6-year-old, what do you want from life? And everything they're going to name, the education will not come up at all. If anything, they're going to say, not go to school. All the things they're going to mention are all things that give them fun. They all get that's what they're bicycle and this and go on trips, and it's all going to be what and the parents are going to smile and say, that's very cute, but that's not life, right? Who says it's not life? Why is it not life? Who made up those rules? Society made up those rules. We're all human beings. So the child, he knows what gives him pleasure. So why don't we just do what the children do and do the same thing? We just make life, society, just completely fun, as people are trying to do, actually, to a large degree, and whatever way they can. We don't. Why? Because somewhere along the road, and some would say that it's more nurtured than nature, that we're taught that way, we need to break out of it, but really not. Because we've broken the nature thing to a large degree, and the nurture thing, it's like people are doing it because this is what they believe has to. People go to college. People, one of the things about the business world that's so good, there's lots of things that are not so great, but one thing that is good is that the business world is so bottom line that it cuts away, even in terms of anti-Semitism, right? There's people out there who don't have businesses, who philosophize about life, and for whatever reason they believe that the Jewish people are making a mistake, and they criticize and they hate and all these things like that. But there are businesses out there, tech businesses, that know Israelis produce great stuff, and they work with them, and they advance, advances their own cause, and they make all kinds of deals, and they push all the anti-Semitism aside because they need the Israeli help. They need the Israeli genius. That's what money will do. That's what business does. It's like, forget about all the shtuyot. Everybody else who's not worried about money and advancing, they can afford, so to speak, to be anti-Semitic, because it doesn't, as far as they're concerned. Although, the point has been made several times before, and mostly in humor, but it's actually true, that take away all the stuff that the Israelis have contributed to society. Take it all away. And the Western world will quickly wake up and realize how much they're also dependent upon this thing. Just that most of it's hidden away and not realized until someone points it out. But we understand, we know that in order to have meaning in life, in order to get pleasure from life, we have to make sacrifices. We have to put ourselves out. There's this feeling you get, there's a sense of accomplishment that's irreplaceable by not doing something easy. It's comfortable to do something easy. It's very, very convenient to do something safe. But at the end of your life, and you're looking back on what you've accomplished, it doesn't feel like you really did very much. So we know that we need to detect this. So people, it's amazing that people, they climb mountains. They climb huge mountains. It's strenuous. They have to train for it. There are people who run marathons that the body's screaming, stop, are you crazy? No, they do it anyhow. There are people in the business world who work hours upon hours, and of course in college, universities, and in the Torah world, some people barely sleep at all. They push themselves, and they learn as much as they possibly can. Always, there's stories of big rabbanim. Even my own Rosh Hashiva, they talk the same story of how they never went to sleep. Sleep came to them. They would learn until they couldn't learn anymore, and they'd fall asleep, and then be woken up half an hour late, 20 minutes later, whatever, to resume their learning once again until it happened again. Personally, it doesn't work for me. Once I fall asleep, boom, that's it. It's going to be very hard for me to learn at all unless I get several hours sleep at that point. Then, but there are people who train themselves to do things like this. We just know that's the way it is. You have to accomplish something. That's what we're built. That's the way the maker made the watch, so to speak. So as a result of that, we see that we're challenged in life, but that challenge, especially if it's something we can deal with, makes us. It creates us. It allows us to accomplish, and it makes the world a better place. So how does this challenge exist? Well, like work, for example, if you look at the definition of work is basically defined as doing something, accomplishing something that goes against your nature, goes against your will. Right? Because as long, for example, as you find out as you raise children, that some of the hardest work you ever do is going on vacation. Taking children on a vacation can be all work for the parents because they're constantly having to take care of them. At home, at least they can take care of themselves somewhat. They can run around, do their own thing, and you can go about doing your thing. But on a vacation, you can watch them everywhere they go for your own sense of your own sanity and for their welfare. So it can be a lot of work. On the other hand, there are people who have jobs that they love so much that every day they cannot wait to get there, because they love their job. And it's not just the money. They just love accomplishing, it could be anything, but they just love their work. And it's hard to call it a job. As they say, an expression goes, that anybody who loves what they do never works a day in their life because they don't call it work. So we see it's relative to what we accomplish in life. But in order to make something challenging, make it what we could call work, there has to be some type of resistance. You need resistance. Without the resistance, it's just downhill the whole way. You're going up a hill, you're fighting against gravity. You're fighting against friction, whatever the forces are, and it's strong, it's hard. But you know that when you run up a hill, you're doing more for your body than when you're running down the hill. It's like gravity is carrying you at that point. Now, so you're not really gaining that much. You're not really building muscle or cardiovascular. It's because of the fact that you go up a hill and you stress. So that resistance in creation, kabbalistically, is called gevurus. That creates the resistance. Without the gevurus, You only have chesed. Chesed, of course, is kindness. It's like water, it flows, and everything becomes utopian, meaning that there's no resistance anymore. Everything is ideal, which would be great, and we would certainly love that, and that's what it's going to be one day, but we can't have right now, because if it was always that way, we never accomplish anything. And since the world was for the sake of accomplishing, because we're told that in order to be able to go to the world to come and enjoy the pleasure, you have to have earned it. There's some special relationship that we have to pleasure when we earn it. When it's illicit, it can tingle the body. Sensation is sensation. You know, you're eating something tastes good, you're drinking something, right? It's stolen, it doesn't taste the same anymore. Right? You can cause the body to have all the senses working. You smell something, right? That's a little hard to get that one wrong. But other things, you know, you can get the body to feel and enjoy the world, but it's not the same thing. The pleasure won't last, and it feels illicit. And as a result of that, Esav. The reason why Esav had to conquer the world and keep taking more and more and more, and most dictators, is because since they do it so illicitly, they never have a chance to build a relationship to it, so they never really get a chance to really feel and enjoy what they've accomplished. It's just more of a psychological, I conquered Austria. Great. But it's not like you did through any real honest means. But if you're elected because you made yourself into a great politician and people like who you are and you're accomplishing things on behalf of people, that feels right. That feels good. There's a sense of ownership in a sense. So this is what we have to do. In order to have work, you have to have resistance. Resistance means that there has to be things in creation specifically that can challenge us in order that really activates our will. People don't realize, when they take the easy way out, they take the comfortable way out. When they avoid issues that they shouldn't really avoid, it's comfortable and it's safe, but you don't accomplish. And the most important thing that you can accumulate in this world is reward in the world to come. And you only get it one way. Lefum Tzara Agra. Chazal, nice, beautiful, short statement. Lefum Tzara Agra. And we like to translate it as according to the effort. Because it sounds so much nicer. Effort, such a part of word. It's like effort. Yeah, I can do effort. That's not a problem. Pain. The actual word is lefum tzara. Tsar, pain. According to the pain. Now, we think about pain. We usually think about pain. You cut your finger, God forbid, or something even worse, and you feel the pain. The paper cut is very painful, especially if you have to be watching an orange right after that. And that's. But the truth is that there's pain all day long. Getting out of bed in the morning is painful, but it's a pain that you've come to accept and you understand, you appreciate. And you know why it's good, so you can put up with it. Relationships can be painful in positive and negative ways, but it's part of life, and it goes on and on and on. There's all kinds of things that exercise is painful, and that if exercise is not painful, it's no longer exercise anymore. At least not really much exercise. Other than just maintaining something like going for long walks is very healthy, 100%. But you're not going to build muscle so much unless, of course, you go long enough and it becomes strenuous. You can feel it. Your legs, if you walk long enough, your muscles will also feel very tired, even though you didn't run. So why? Because there's resistance, and that resistance creates that stress in the muscle, which causes the muscle to grow, but also to become sore in the meantime. So when God made the world, He made the world with a certain amount of this energy in the world, in order to be able to challenge us. It's not just for challenging us, by the way. It's also necessary because there are two types of lights. Like I mentioned, the chesed is like water. Like water will go anywhere it goes. If you want to drink of water, you're standing by a river, right? You could just stick your face into the river, but it's more convenient to have a glass. So people cup their hands together, they'll drink from their hands. When you do this, right, this is also gevura. You're making, with some say, you're making a kli, making a vessel. Before the water is all over the place, but you do this, all of a sudden there's water in your hands or, in a cup, and then you can take a drink. Because of the glass. The glass itself is like the concept of gura because it constrains and it constricts. It's resisting the water. The cup is resisting, the water is going, let me out, I want to go all over the table. And the cup's saying, nope, I will not let you go to the table, right? It's going to push against it. Every day, they check Hoover Dam and all the Boulder Dam and all these huge dams around the world for cracks. Because the water in the reservoir above is pushing with all of its might against the dam, trying to break it. And a hairline crack is a serious warning about what might be coming up. So they have to fix it, repair it, and keep track. Every single day they check it for these reasons. And they have to make it hugely thick to make it strong. But all of these concepts fall into the category of gvuras. Anytime you have constraint, anytime you have resistance, it's a function of gvura. So there's two ways we see in life, right? The gvura really has two ways to be used up, so to speak, in a very positive way, in a very negative way, right? For one day, a person's lying in bed and it's time to get up. It's 7 o'clock, the alarm goes off. They've already hit the snooze button 5 times. And they need to get out of bed because they don't get out of bed now. They know that they will not be able to have breakfast and get dressed in time and catch the bus. They miss the bus when they get up and eat later. So they have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? That's so that, and they feel the pull, and it's like literally it feels like there's a force on top of their back keeping them in bed. It's really just comfort. The comfort is so good versus the pain of getting up, so it keeps a person pinned down. Unless they have a good discipline. Discipline is the same idea. What are you doing with discipline? You're using gvura to constrain a situation. A well-disciplined, who do we call disciplined? Somebody who could be doing something else that's more comfortable, something else easier, something that's safer, but they have willed to do the better thing instead. That might be exercise, might be going to work on time, getting up in time for davening, having kavanah when you're praying, doing mitzvahs, as many as you possibly can, giving, tzedakah, giving more tzedakah, right? You're prepared to give 5. That's comfortable. I can do that. I can give 5 and be comfortable. But this guy's now asking me for 5 more shekels, and part of me is going 10 shekels. Are you kidding? See, that's gevura. Gevura is stinginess is a function of gevura because it's a constraint. Now, there's times you have to be stingy, and there's times when you should be stingy, even though you feel like being generous. And to not be generous at a time, for example, the halacha is someone who should be working, should have a job, because that's better for them, and they're instead collecting charity. The halacha is not to give them, even though you just get them off your case. Maybe make you feel, you're not guilty, you don't have to investigate, right? But it may be the bigger mitzvah not to give. That's also taking gvura. But the point is still the point. And that is that however we use gvura in the world, whether it's through anti-Semitism, kidnappings, whether it's through discipline, whether getting up in the morning, making minyanim, having, doing the things that we're supposed to do to fix the world, make it a better place, it's all gvura. So every time we're using any energy to try to direct the world ourselves in one specific way, it's using gevuras. And we were given it as a budget from heaven to be able to accomplish, as partners with God, the completion of ourselves and, of course, of creation. And it's not forever. It's not unlimited. There's a lot, clearly. We are, almost 6,000 years later, we're still doing it, right? But it has an end. It has an end. And, different stages of history, there were also intermediary ends. For example, the redemption from Haman, important time. That whole thing was to use up gevuras. Haman came into the picture specifically because if he hadn't, the Jews would just keep doing the same thing they were doing for the last 69 years. And that wasn't positive. That wasn't what God had in mind, not for the future at least. So to get the Jewish people to start redirecting the gevuras in a more positive, spiritual way, Haman came along. And then the Greeks came along, and the Romans came along, and the Arabs have come along. All of it, all this pressure, all the things that we feel are to push us to use up the gevuras in a positive way. And if we don't use them up in a positive way, then they still get used up, but in a negative way. And that manifests itself in terms of evil, anti-Semitism, Holocausts, whatever happens in history. And not just to the Jewish people, by the way, but also to the nations of the world, but specifically to the Jewish people. It advances the cause. right? It advances the cause. It's like telling a student who's misbehaved, okay, you have to pay a debt, right? You can do it one of two ways. Either you can stay after school for a whole week, right, for half an hour every day and clean all the chalkboards. That'll be your job. You do that for 1 week, all the classrooms, you're finished. You've paid your debt. Or I will give you a strap. And one that you will not forget. Your choice. Your choice. The old days, you can't do it anymore, right? Principals did that. Once upon a time, kids got straps in school a long time ago. But that's the choice, right? You can either do that, right, or the other one. You're thinking to yourself, let me see, clean the blackboards, that will take up all this time. I can't believe my friends after school, and there's a lot of work, we're very tired, and I don't know. If I get a strap on the other hand, it's going to be very painful, but it will last about 2-3 days, and the pain will go away, and I'll be on my own again. On the other hand, you go back and forth until you figure out which is the best way to do it. And that's the Jewish people too. That's basically what we're being asked by God, to decide how to use up. Use them up. It has to happen anyhow, no matter what. But how it gets used up is very much affected by the things that we do. But seemingly, there is a schedule, and there are other aspects of this discussion that defy our own logic, defy our own perception. As many answers as we have, and we'd like to have them. I mean, the person was asking, they asked me a question, and despite the fact that for years I have been dealing with this material and writing about it and teaching about it and all that, the answer to the question was, we don't know. We don't know why suffering has to play such a role in Jewish history. We just don't know. We just know that it does. We just know that God says it's a good thing for whatever reason. We can argue, disagree, but he's God. He made us. He knows the world. He's not working from the outside. He's working from the inside. So if God says suffering is important, it's all part of the process, good suffering, bad suffering, whatever it is, but why does it have to be this way after thousands of years? Why must it be a factor? Why can't it? So that's like a student saying to a teacher, in a sense, why must they write the exam? You're the teacher. You could just say, you pass. And they could. And sometimes people have done things like that. But it's not the norm. No. Because the point is the education. And the point of the exam is to test your level of knowledge. We haven't done that. I could pass you. The point of the course is not to pass you. It's just a result. The point of the course is to teach you that you can go on to become a better, more qualified individual, responsible citizen of society. If you don't do the exam, we won't know where you're holding, and we don't know if we accomplish the goal of this education and why your parents pay for the school in the first place. So you have to take the exam. Same thing is that we don't understand necessarily, although the truth is, we understand a lot more than most people know. In the end, in Kabbalah, it does really go quite deep and does really explain things in a very profound way. I mean, we could talk about the three ears of tikkunim, for example, al pi Kabbalah, al pi Sod. The first one's called Tikkun Seder Kalilus, and I'll explain in a second. The second one's called Tikkun Soda Kalilus, right? And the third one's called Tikkun Soda Achdus, and that actually covers creation until 10,000. 10,000, since 57, just barely halfway there, right? 6,000 is that's the end of history as we know it, and then the world to come begins. Well, we have clocks. How do we know that it's 8,000 and 9,000? 1,000 is a long time. So time that we use right now is really a convention more than the real type of time. Time will be measured differently in the world to come, but we've been all working towards one really ultimate goal. You have your personal goal. We have our societal goals. We have national goals. We have international goals, right? But there's really one goal that sums up all of history and all of mankind, and is so abstract and so difficult to comprehend that really is not even worth trying sometimes. But if you want to know what it is, it's one day after all is said and done, way, way in the future, that all of this will really be nothing compared to the fact that we're going to unify once again with our Creator. We came from Him, right? Everything came from the light of God, one unified source that gave rise to the entire creation and all the different species and different things, and separated and became unique and different from one another until we have billions and billions of things in the world. and billions of people over history and all that. But everyone came from one person. Adam Rishon, at one point in time, the first man, had all the souls of all humanity inside of him. One structure. Then he did the sin. They all broke off, became individual souls. It's all going to reverse at some point in time. We're all working back. Everything we're doing, this stuff is like really like such a sideshow, although it's the main event right now. We're all moving back towards God. All of history, evil will disappear first, and then the good will become more refined, and then more refined, and more refined. In the Beis Hamikdash, part of the sacrifice was the soulless. The soulless was wheat, right? But it had to be refined. So there are 13 sieves, different levels of sieves, and it had to go through all 13 levels of the sieves before it was fitting to be used as part of the sacrifice. Why? Why was it so important? You're going to burn it anyhow. Why is it so important? Or eat it, and cook and eat. But why is it so important that it becomes so refined? Because that's all what's going on in life. That's all life is about in this world. It's about this refinement process. It can be more spiritual, more refined, more spiritual, more refined. So that eventually we'll be so refined we can reconnect up with God once again and get the incredible ultimate pleasure He's been saving for us the entire time, for which creation was made in the first place. See, we do know, right? And all of this somehow feeds into that. And it's a process, right? So when it's all said and done, so then what are we supposed to be doing, right? What can we do? Yeah, there's history and participate as much as you possibly can, but in a sense, it always comes back to the same analogy that, not so much for questions and answers, but always come back for the same analogy that to me, like one of the best I've ever come up with to explain such an important, complicated concept. And that is musical chairs. I think everyone's played musical chairs at some point in their life. I don't know who came up with the idea, but it's a very simple game that's, basically, you have a bunch of chairs and people go in a circle, you keep playing the music. And the idea is that there's less chairs than there are people. And as the people go out, you take away more chairs until eventually it gets down to maybe 2 people, and maybe 1 chair is left. And the question is, when the music stops, who gets the chair? Whoever gets the chair, they win. As long as you get a chair, you're not out. So as the music is playing, on one hand, the music is playing as if it can go on forever. But it's not. At some point in time, it's going to stop. And the question is going to be, where are you going to be when the music stops? Are you going to be close up to the chair, far away from the chair? Right? If you get anxious, you want to run for the chair, but if you run for the chair, it's cheating, and you'll be disqualified. But if you go too late, of course, you miss out. So this tension of on one hand, going in a circle, but you feel this gravitational pull towards the chair. So it's like and then the music stops, and it now comes down to, and one person gets the chair, unless they fight for it at the same time. But one person gets the chair. And the question was, where were you? What was going on? Your mind might have been distracted for 1 split second. How many times, amazing, in the middle of davening, having all this intention for davening, and something crosses my mind for 1 second, and a whole bracha has gone by just like that. Distraction is always going on. But where will you be? And that's really the question that all of us deal with, right? The music is going to stop. It's slowing down already. We are so close to the end. I'm almost prepared to call it the end, like the end at this point in time. But I get in trouble for things like that, so I won't. But the main thing is that where will you be, and what will you be doing when it happens? Something meaningful or something ridiculous, something that doesn't really count for too much. That's the way we're supposed to be thinking. And you need gevuras to do that. You need discipline. You need to be able to be focused. You can't just go with the flow of history. You have to be focused. And that's all function of gevura. And when you use gevura in that way, A, to stay focused on what's meaningful, B, to use your energy to do what's meaningful, then you rectify yourself and refine yourself and the world the way you're supposed to. And you spare yourself having to have gevura function against you, as has happened so many times in Jewish history. So yeah, history is playing out. All this is going on. Why must it be exactly the way it is? We'll have to ask God that question later on. We just know that it is. In the meantime, we also know what we can do about it. And that's what we're trying to accomplish on a daily basis. Shabbat shalom.